Hello everyone. Welcome to the final 2022 episode of Wehry Weekly History and Entertainment News. 2022 was the first time in 2 years that there was some resemblance of normalcy from the COVID pandemic. Many more arts and entertainment businesses had full seasons with less restrictions in place, and there were more shows performed than there have been the past 2 years. Even though the pandemic is still lingering, it's nice to know that the local shows are back and better than ever. On this episode, I'll be reviewing the plays, music, art, movies, and road trips that made Berkshire County so fascinating in 2022. First, it's time for this episode's trivia question. It's a two-part trivia question. This episode's question is, which Berkshire County native was an inaugural inductee into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and where was he born? Now, for the 2022 Year in Review Special. Our first artistic point of interest will be about the theater seasons in Berkshire County. We will be starting with Barrington Stage Company in Pittsfield, which had a busy summer season. This marked the first full summer season since the start of the pandemic. It also marked the final year of former artistic director Julianne Boyd, who has since retired. Barrington Stage Company debuted with the production of the award-winning musical Ain't Misbehavin'. This was followed by the original play, The Super Duper Kid, which was written by Berkshire County native Ty Allen Jackson. The award-winning play, Waiting for Godot. Another original play in All of Me. And finally, the musical A Little Night Music. This was a particularly important show, as it marked the final show produced by Julianne Boyd. Their new artistic director is Alan Paul, who comes from Washington, D.C.'s Shakespeare Theater Company, not to be confused with the one in Lenox. The 38-year-old has won several Helen Hayes Awards, Washington, D.C.'s local theater awards. He has a deep love of musicals, opera, and music, and will try to bring that love of theater to Barrington Stage Company. When he was announced as BSC's new artistic director, Paul said, quote, "I'm excited to build on BSC's legacy as an incubator for new plays and musicals from a broad variety of voices. Musicals are my first love, and I plan to make the advancement of musical theater a cornerstone of my vision," end quote. WWHEN wishes Julianne Boyd the best in her retirement, and Alan Paul great luck in his new role. Our next theater group is the Berkshire Theater Group, which includes theaters in the Colonial Theater in Pittsfield and Stockbridge's Unicorn Theater. While they did have some plays, which included Broken Code Bird Switching, Songs for a New World, Smokey and Me, a celebration of Smokey Robinson, and Seascape, their focus in 2022 was on concerts. The most popular series of concerts under the Berkshire Theater Group were cover machines. These included The Machine, Pink Floyd, the Guthrie Brothers, Simon and Garfunkel, Moondance, Van Morrison, Rev Tour's Last Performance, the band, and Bon Journey, a combination of Bon Jovi and Journey. Other musicians that focused on original music performing at Berkshire Theater Group included Cheetah Rivera, The Rhythm of My Life, and Susan Werner. BTG ended the year with many holiday shows. These included Wizards of Winter, The Doo-Wop Project, and Come Home for the Holidays. Going back to theater, there were two other major theater companies that produced shows in 2022. One of these was the Williamstown Theater Festival. Normally, the group puts on between 6 and 8 shows. However, due to issues with working grievances, the festival only put out 3 shows this year. They were A Man of God, Most Happy in Concert, and We Are Continuous. Concluding our theater review, at Shakespeare & Company in Lenox, they had a full list of shows. These included original productions of The Approach and A Walk in the Woods, plus revitalizations of Homer's An Iliad, and 2 new productions of Shakespeare works, Much Ado About Nothing and Measure for Measure. Here's hoping for more theatrical success in 2023. Another popular event in Berkshire County were concerts. I've already talked about some of the concerts that happened at the Berkshire Theater Group. One of the busiest sources of concerts came from Tanglewood in Lenox. Those who performed this year included a classical music group called the Lund On Demand Concert, former Beatles drummer and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Ringo Starr, jazz icon Bonnie Raitt, award-winning conductor Michael Tilson Thomas, and 6-time Grammy winner Brandi Carlile. Continuing our concert series, Mass Mocha was another great source of concerts this year. Some of the musicians highlighted included R&B singer Faye Webster, musician/poet Dion Jones, the extremely popular Solid Sound Festival, Mass Mocha's busiest concert, Fresh Grass Blues Festival, the rock and pop show Churches, Oscar-nominated jazz musician Samel Pitts, indie rock artist Soccer Mommy, performance artists Taylor Matt and Matt Ray, and Grammy-nominated hip-hop artist Jay Horde. Mass Mocha also had many new art exhibits, which were often included with the concerts for free admissions. These included Weep Holes from Lily Cox Richard, visual artist Amy Hoft, E.J. Hill, whose work had a rideable roller coaster in it, and Jason Moran, who discussed African American history within jazz music in his art pieces. Another place showing concerts, along with a few other interesting events, was the Mahawi Theater in Great Barrington. This marked their first full year of events since the pandemic began. Their shows this year included a stand-up performance by comedian Tom Papa, a talk called Why Design Matters, featuring authors and partners Debbie Milligan and Roxanne Gay, rock band The Wallflowers, led by Jacob Dylan, son of iconic musician Bob Dylan, the extremely popular Berkshire International Film Festival, the pop musician Josh Ritter, the Handel and Haydn Classical Musical Society, the rock band High Kings, and musicians Graham Nash and Chris Isaak, who co-headlined the show together. All of these concerts proved to be big hits and showed that the Berkshire music scene is back on track. Our next segment on the WWHEN Year in Review special is Artwork. Berkshire County is famous for its art museums, and the 2022 exhibits were no exception. We've already discussed the artwork that was displayed at Mass MoCA in North Adams. Another popular art museum was the Williams College Museum of Art. This was reopened for the first time in 2 years. Exhibits highlighted in 2022 included Retro Japan, which focused on 18th century artwork that was set in that country, Worshipping at the Altar of Uncertainty, a site-specific installation that was inspired by the Library of Babel, Franz Zefferin, a Haitian-born artist who focused on the spiritual aspects in art, Mary Ann Unger's To Shape Moon from a Bone, a neo-expressionist work, and Embodied Words, which discussed the Middle Ages and language. The next art museum I will be talking about is the Clark Art Museum in Williamstown. In 2022, they had a wide range of art exhibits, as well as discussions of art and film displays. These included Imaginary City, a series of paintings by Tom El Salahi, a Haitian-born artist focusing on architecture, Rodin in the United States, a talk discussing Augustine Rodin, best known for his sculpture, The Thinker. A combined display of geometric artist Tarba Arbak and object artist Yuji Atsumetsu, Jose Guadalupe Posada, who was one of Mexico's most renowned artists. In the Horizon, an art talk focusing on the connections of atmosphere and art, a summer film series that ran documentaries, which included ones made by Agnes Varda and Orson Welles, and a film exhibition series which showed some of the earliest known animation segments from animators such as Winsor McRae and Len Lai. Another art museum of interest was the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge. They had some very interesting exhibits discussed here on WWHEN as well. One of these included Lincoln Memorial Talks, which described how the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., which turned 100 years old in 2022, was conceptualized, designed, and built by local artist Daniel Chester French. Another exhibit was the Norman Rockwell Drawing Exhibit, which featured some of Norman Rockwell's early non-magazine drawings. The last exhibit highlighted on WWHEN was Eloise and Me, which discussed the history behind the popular children's books, Eloise at the Plaza. The last Berkshire County Art Museum that I will be discussing for the year-end special is the Berkshire Museum in Pittsfield. They had a new exhibit for families called 20,000 Voyages Under the Sea, which was based off the Jules Verne novel. A new Lego club, which was very popular with children. The Berkshire Backyard exhibit, highlighting native animals of Berkshire County. Visual Evidence, an art exhibit highlighting 20 up-and-coming artists in Berkshire County. And the Art of Tattoos, which featured the fascinating history of tattooing. The Berkshire Museum's busy year continued with the announcement of Kimberly Bush Toimo as the new executive director of the Berkshire Museum. She comes from the Asian American Museum in San Francisco. All of these art exhibits and more prove that art in the Berkshires is still strong, even with the pandemic lingering. Our next segment will be discussing movie news, both locally and nationally. 2022 proved to be an interesting year at the movies. First, there are two local stories of interest. Sadly, the popular Regal Cinemas at the former Berkshire Mall unexpectedly closed in February. There was no direct reason why it closed, although this could have been because of the movie theater industry struggling as a whole. In Berkshire County, the only movie theaters now open include the Beacon Cinema in Pittsfield, Images Cinema in Williamstown, the Triplex Cinema in Great Barrington, and the North Adams Movieplex 8. On a happier note, the documentary Hello Bookstore opened in film festivals nationwide. The film tells the story of the Bookstore in Lenox, a popular small bookshop that temporarily closed during the pandemic but came back stronger than ever. It was written, directed, shot, co-edited, and co-produced by filmmaker Adam Zaks of West Stockbridge. After its theatrical premiere at the Independent Film Forum in Manhattan's Greenwich Village, the documentary was screened nationwide in Los Angeles, Boston, and other places. The movie is currently available on demand, streaming on Amazon Prime, or rentable at your local library. Now for some national movie news. Hollywood is slowly recovering from the pandemic. There are some interesting notes to point out, however. There is seemingly a divide between movies with an established franchise and movies without. According to the website boxofficemojo.com, which is pictured here, 8 out of the top 10 highest grossing movies in 2022 are sequels. Another one is a superhero origin story, and the last is a musical biography. Additionally, half of the top 10 is superhero movies. I can understand why the list is like this. People want to see movies that they feel comfortable with. However, other movies deserve attention, and during this year, WWHEN highlighted both sides of the coin. Some of the movies that I reviewed this year included 222, an excellent hidden gem movie that I found on HBO Max, Moonfall, a disaster film made by the king of them, Roland Emmerich, Uncharted, an action film based off a popular video game series, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, another Marvel hit, though slightly disappointing to me, Uma, a very scary independent horror film, The Woman King, which actually was the first movie I saw in a theater in nearly a year and was well worth the price of admission. A binge watch of all the Jurassic Park franchise films. That was the most fun I've had watching movies this year. And my personal favorite movie of the year, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Here's hoping that 2023 has just as good of a movie schedule as the past year has. Our next story in the WWHEN Year in Review bounces off of the film segment. With prices of movies expensive, both in theaters and on demand, one of the best things to do is wait a few months until they are out on DVD and rent them free of charge at your local library. Libraries played an extensive part in the 2022 WWHEN episodes. I've talked about the North Adams Library and their history, but I also did an extensive discussion on the Berkshire Atheneum. Things to do at the libraries include films, workshops, health-related events, and talks that may be attended for Berkshire Community College students for form credit. If there is a book or a movie that you can't find at the Pittsfield Library, you can borrow it through another library via the interloaning system. Finally, it's great to find passes here to other places. Many of the museums that I've talked about on this episode can be visited for free with a pass. These include the Berkshire Museum, Mass MoCA, Norman Rockwell Museum, and the Clark Art Museum. Speaking of these passes, many of these are also good for museums outside of Berkshire County. This means it's time for a road trip portion review. In 2022, I talked about several museums in Springfield, Massachusetts, located an hour from Pittsfield. These included the George Walter Vincent Smith Art Museum, which was Springfield's first museum, the Springfield Science Museum, which used to be City Hall of Springfield, the Michelle and Donald D'Amore Fine Art Museum, which contains a wide variety of art, the Lyman and Mary Wood Museum of Springfield History, which contains the largest Indian motorcycle collection in the world, and the Amazing World of Dr. Seuss. I also talked about two museums in Holyoke that are actually located within the same building. These are the Volleyball Hall of Fame and the Holyoke Children's Museum. The last road trip that I will be discussing, I visited using one of the passes from the Berkshire Atheneum. The trip was to the Basketball Hall of Fame, which is located in Springfield, Massachusetts. I visited there on December 1st. The Hall of Fame really has undergone a lot of changes over the past few years, since I last went in 2017. One of the best new parts is its new interactive venues. Before, a lot of exhibits were just jerseys, basketballs, or history tidbits. Now, you can actually learn about the players, coaches, and history of basketball as if you were there. In fact, I actually got to touch the most recent NBA Finals trophy. One of the more interesting displays was the Inside the NBA set. As a person who was into TV station filming, I loved how it was set up exactly like the award-winning TNT show. My favorite exhibit was the one in which they displayed the Hall of Famers on touchscreens. Here you can learn about the who, what, where, when, why, and how of basketball's greatest players. Some of the touchscreens even have videos on the players' backgrounds, depending on the time period. The whole Hall of Fame really feels like a love letter to basketball. About the only complaint I have about the Hall of Fame is its gift shop. They had a very limited selection. Maybe they had some shipping issues, but I was a little disappointed with the lack of merchandise in the store. Despite this, the Basketball Hall of Fame is an excellent road trip well worth the visit. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, I give the Hall of Fame a 9.5. As stated earlier, it's an excellent love letter to basketball, and it has a lot of interactive exhibits that describe the history of basketball really well. The Basketball Hall of Fame also brings us the answer to this episode's trivia question, which was a 2-part question. As a reminder, this episode's question was, which Berkshire County native was an inaugural inductee into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and where was he born? The answer to the first part is Oswald Tower, and the answer to the second part is North Adams. Oswald Tower was born in North Adams in 1883. According to the Basketball Hall of Fame's website, quote, a 50-year member of the National Basketball Rules Committee, Oswald Tower played a central role in basketball's development in the first half of the 20th century. When basketball was invented, the game lacked standardized rules, and teams from different regions conformed to different rules. Tower worked toward creating a uniform set of basketball rules and popularizing basketball along the East Coast. From 1915 to 1959, Tower served as the editor of the Official Basketball Guide and was an official rules interpreter. In 1942, as part of the celebration of basketball's first half-century, Tower was awarded the Harold M. Gore Award, an honor granted to the individual who contributed the most to the game, end quote. Locally, an annual scholarship is awarded to a high school basketball player who shows, quote, innovation and determination, end quote. Just like Tower did when he created the rules of basketball. There were many other stories that I discussed on WWHEN, but could not get to for this year-end special. If you would like to see any more information about arts and entertainment events, listen for the information at the end of my show. That concludes the 2022 year-end special of Wehry Weekly History and Entertainment News. If you would like to watch this episode or get any information on venues not discussed in this episode, you can visit Pittsfield TV's and CTSB TV's websites shown here, or visit NBCTC's Facebook page. Also, if you would like to see the episodes in HD quality, make sure to check out my YouTube page at RT Wehry. Thank you, and have a happy and safe New Year, and see you in 2023.